America. Bonjour. Hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt inside the ReallyFactor.com studio inside of the Beltway, as is Rob Bluey. It is time for the Heritage Hour. Rob is the Vice President of Communications at the Heritage Foundation. He's the Executive Editor of the Daily Signal. He joins me each week at this time because I like to beat up on Steelers fans. Hello, Rob. How are you?
Doing well, Hugh. It's good to be back with my favorite Browns fan.
You know, are you ever going to wear any Steelers gear so you can at least abuse your choice of wardrobe?
I should have worn my Steelers jersey. I've got the football behind me there. So.
That doesn't count. We don't want a shot of that. Rob, there's a lot to cover. I was just talking with Admiral Stavridis about the Russian bounty story. I'll come back to that. Let's start with the Supreme Court. I am not nearly as upset as many conservatives are by the Chief Justice's concurring opinion. What is your assessment? What does the Heritage Foundation think about yesterday?
We are certainly disappointed with the court's ruling on this. I understand that there are those conservatives who are taking the long game view, like you, thinking that, this is perhaps not the best case to rule on the issue of abortion. And maybe there's a future case that will have a better outcome for the issue that pro-life Americans care about. However, Hugh, I will say that in this particular case, I spoke to Jeff Landry, the Attorney General in Louisiana, when the case was argued, and I did feel that they had a strong argument going into it. So it was certainly disappointing to see that Chief Justice Roberts took a different position than he did just 5 years ago in a similar case.
Yeah, his argument was, for the benefit of the audience, I was a dissenter 5 years ago. Now I'm in the majority because of the doctrine of stare decisis. And I think, Rob, I want to see if I can persuade you about this, and maybe you can persuade Heritage. I think he's laying down a marker. If, God forbid, any of the 5 center-right judges die during a Biden presidency and is replaced by a leftist, as would inevitably happen, Roberts' opinion will stand as an argument that we ought not to reverse recently decided cases like Hobby Lobby and I hope Our Lady of Guadalupe. In other words, I think the chief is playing a long game and trying to build a wall against precipitous reversing of long arriving, for example, public employee union cases.
I do think that there's a factor that's going into his thinking with regard to that, Hugh. And I think that there's another factor, which is he's taking a view of the court as an institution and him as the Chief Justice needing to play a role. However, that doesn't mean that conservatives are going to be pleased with him. In the last 12 days, he's had 3 decisions that go against where conservatives stand on issues from DACA to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and now this case out of Louisiana. So well, I certainly understand his long-term thinking on this, and perhaps a future case that could be decided with those liberal justices. I just have a hard time. This was a hard-fought nomination that President Bush had. And certainly on numerous occasions now, Chief Justice Roberts has disappointed conservatives. And I think it's one of those factors when conservatives turn out for a president, we know from experience that this is one of those issues that they vote on. And I think that, Hugh, if there's one lesson that we've learned here, it's that the legislature, our Congress, needs to take tough votes on some of these issues and solve some of these issues before they ever get to the court.
Well, hey, we agree on that. But we also have to look at those 5 that you talked about. There is the Obamacare decision, which in retrospect was the reason that the United States Senate went for the Republicans in 2014. If they had overturned Obamacare in 2012, I don't think that would have happened in 2014. There is the DACA decision, which I'm actually comfortable with because I believe the administrative record was a Jeff Sessions nightmare. I still think Jeff Sessions, we're living with the consequences of a badly run Department of Justice in the first 2 years of the Trump administration. The decision on the 1964 Civil Rights Act is a Gorsuch decision with which the Chief Justice joined. There's a good argument by Sean Trendy that the Chief Justice joined that opinion in order to assign it to Neil Gorsuch, because otherwise it would have been Gorsuch and Ruth Bader Ginsburg assigning the opinion. As for the abortion case, there's the long game. What matters this week, I will give up defending the Chief Justice if we do not win Our Lady of Guadalupe. I really will, because to me, you got to have priorities. My priority is religious liberty, and he's been very strong on Hobby Lobby, Little Sisters of the Poor. He's been very strong on free speech. And I just think conservatives have got to be careful about calling people Souter when they're not Souter. I'm looking at you, Rob.
Yeah, Hugh, you cut out there for a second, but sorry about
I was saying we've got to be careful about calling people David Souter who are not David Souter. I just don't think the Chief Justice is David Souter.
Right. And we should also talk about the good decision yesterday on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I mean, this was a decision that I think conservatives generally welcomed because they don't like the structure of the bureau. This was an Elizabeth Warren creation, you might recall, and the court in a decision that sided with the conservative or Republican position held very strong. It's some of these social issues that Chief Justice Roberts seems to be dissenting on. Some of the other ones aren't necessarily as bad. So yes, you're absolutely correct on that point. I would not yet put him in the Souter camp, but given the influence that Republican presidents have had in shaping this court, Hugh, I think you would acknowledge there have been some bad picks over the years and there have been some disappointments.
Oh, I think David Souter was a disaster. It was Edith Jones or David Souter. Edith Jones is the best circuit court judge in the United States. She could have been on the court for the last 30 years, and we don't have Edith Jones on the court. Everything would be different. But I do look at statutory cases and regulatory cases very different from constitutional cases. And you just named a constitutional case, the unitary executive. Roberts was with the conservatives in saying the president can fire whoever is in the executive branch unless they serve a fixed term in a regulatory commission. Even that should be revisited, in my view.